You've probably felt this before. You share an idea in a meeting, and it lands flat. 5 minutes later, someone else says almost the same thing, and suddenly everyone nods. Or you suggest a plan, and people respond with, "Maybe. I'll think about it." Or worse, silence. Meanwhile, you see others casually say things like, "Most teams are already doing this. Everyone else is on board. This is pretty standard now." And somehow, it works. But here's the problem. You don't want to exaggerate. You don't want to lie. You don't want to manipulate people by pretending there's more support than there actually is. So, how do you use social proof? One of the most powerful principles of influence, ethically and effectively. In this video, I'll show you exactly how to use everyone else without losing your integrity. You've probably experienced this. You share an idea in a meeting. You've thought it through. It's logical. It solves a real problem. And the response? Silence. A polite nod. Let's circle back. Then, 10 minutes later, someone else suggests something similar. And suddenly, the room leans in. Or maybe it's not meetings. Maybe it's when you propose a plan to friends, suggest a new system at work, or try to set a boundary. You feel like your words just don't carry weight. Like you need some kind of invisible backing before people take you seriously. Here's the part that matters. This is not a sign that you're unintelligent. It's not proof that your ideas are weak. And it's definitely not evidence that you lack confidence. More often, it's because you're overlooking how human decision-making actually works. Most of us were taught to believe that good ideas win on logic alone. But in real life, people don't evaluate ideas in isolation. They look sideways first. They scan the room. They subconsciously ask, what are other people thinking about this? This is where social proof comes in. Social proof is the psychological tendency to look at what others are doing to decide what's correct or safe. When people feel uncertain, and uncertainty shows up constantly in meetings, negotiations, and conversations, they rely on cues from others. This principle was popularized by Robert Cialdini, who identified social proof as one of the core drivers of human influence. Behavioral science research consistently shows that when we're unsure, we conform, not because we're weak, but because we're wired for efficiency and belonging. And here's something important. Using social proof ethically is not manipulation. Manipulation involves exaggeration, deception, or creating a false sense of consensus. Ethical influence is different. It's about accurately representing reality in a way that reduces uncertainty and builds trust. In this video, you're going to learn why social proof works at a psychological level, the different types you can use without lying, how to apply them in real conversations, exact phrases you can use instead of vague, everyone's doing it statements, and step-by-step scenarios to practice. Because once you understand how people actually make decisions, you don't need to speak louder. You just need to speak smarter. If you want more people to actually listen when you speak, hit like so this video reaches others who need these skills too. To use social proof well, you need to understand something deeper. Human beings are wired for belonging and risk reduction. Your brain is constantly asking two quiet questions. Is this safe? Is this socially acceptable? And whenever the answer isn't obvious, something automatic happens. Uncertainty triggers social scanning. When you're unsure, you don't immediately analyze every detail from scratch. You look sideways before you look forward. You check what other people are doing. This isn't weakness, it's efficiency. Psychologists describe this through two related forces. First, informational social influence. This is when you assume others might know something you don't. If many people are choosing an option, your brain interprets that as useful data. They probably see something I'm missing. Second, normative social influence. This is about belonging. Even if you're not completely convinced, You don't want to stand out unnecessarily. You want alignment, approval, acceptance. You see this everywhere. You're walking through a new city looking for dinner. One restaurant is empty. The one next door has a line outside. Without reading a single review, you feel pulled toward the crowded one. Why? Because other people chose this feels safer than I'm choosing alone. Or think about app downloads. If one app has 47 reviews and another has 4.7 million, your brain instantly interprets that number as credibility. At work, it's subtler, but just as powerful. If you say, I think we should try this, that's one voice. If you say, 3 other teams have already tested this and saw improvements, now the idea feels less risky. The key insight is this: social proof reduces perceived risk. And risk, not logic, is often what blocks agreement. But here's the ethical guardrail. Social proof works best when it's specific and truthful. The moment you exaggerate or imply consensus that doesn't exist, you erode long-term trust. Short-term compliance isn't worth long-term credibility. Your goal isn't to pressure people. It's to reduce uncertainty honestly. Now that you understand why everyone else feels safe, let's break down the different types of social proof you can use without lying. Now, let's make this practical. Not all social proof is the same. If you use the wrong type, or use it vaguely, it falls flat. If you use the right type, clearly and honestly, it lowers resistance immediately. Here are 4 types you can use ethically. 1. Majority proof. Definition: majority proof shows that a large portion of a relevant group has already chosen a certain action. This is the classic, most people are doing this. Example at work. Instead of saying, we should switch to this system, you say, 6 out of 8 departments have already transitioned to this workflow. That statement does 2 things. It reduces uncertainty and signals safety. Ethical boundary. Do not say everyone if it's not everyone. Replace exaggeration with specifics. Numbers build credibility. Vague consensus destroys it. 2. Peer proof. Definition: peer proof highlights that people similar to the listener have adopted the idea. This works because similarity increases trust. Example: if you're speaking to junior analysts, saying, other junior analysts have started using this template to save time, is far more persuasive than referencing senior executives. People care most about what their equals are doing. Ethical boundary. Make sure the peer group is accurate. Don't stretch categories to force alignment. If the comparison feels artificial, it creates skepticism. 3. Authority-backed proof. Definition: authority-backed proof references credible experts or respected figures to reduce doubt. For example, in negotiation contexts, you might reference techniques from Chris Voss when discussing structured communication strategies. You're not saying, do this because I said so. You're saying, this approach has been used successfully by recognized experts. Ethical boundary. Don't name drop to inflate importance. Only reference authority when it's directly relevant and accurate. 4. Emerging trend proof. Definition: emerging trend proof shows that a behavior is becoming increasingly common. Example: this approach is becoming more common in our industry over the last year. This signals momentum without overstating consensus. Ethical boundary. Becoming more common is different from everyone is doing it. Stay precise. When you understand these 4 types, you stop relying on vague statements and start using structured influence. Now we need to draw a clear line. Because the moment you start using phrases like most people or others are already doing this, a fair question comes up. Is this influence or is this manipulation? Let's define it clearly. Manipulation is intentionally misleading someone for personal gain. It involves exaggeration, selective omission, or creating a false sense of consensus to pressure a decision. Saying everyone agrees when only one person does. That's manipulation, implying broad support that doesn't exist. Also Manipulation. And here's the problem. Even if it works once, it damages credibility long term. Once trust cracks, your influence drops dramatically. Now contrast that with ethical influence. Ethical influence is based on accurate representation, mutual benefit, transparency. You are not fabricating support. You are clarifying existing reality in a way that reduces uncertainty. Look at the difference. Dishonest. Everyone agrees this is the best option. Ethical. 3 people on the team have already expressed interest in trying this. The second statement is precise, measurable, verifiable, and that precision matters. Here's a practical framework you can start using immediately. Replace vague exaggeration with measurable specificity. Instead of everyone, most people, a lot of teams, basically all companies, use exact numbers, clearly defined groups, time references, observable trends. For example, 4 out of 6 clients renewed after using this. 2 other managers have asked about this approach this week. In the last quarter, 3 departments tested this successfully. There's a psychological reason this works. Specific numbers increase trust. When you say a lot, the brain hears marketing. When you say 7 out of 10, the brain hears data. Specificity signals honesty. Vagueness triggers skepticism. Let's briefly recap where we are. You've learned that social proof reduces uncertainty. You've seen the 4 types you can use ethically. And now you understand the integrity line. Influence clarifies reality. Manipulation distorts it. From here, we get even more practical, because knowing the principle is helpful. But knowing exactly what to say in real conversations, that's where your influence starts to shift. Now we move from theory to language, because small wording shifts create big perception shifts. Here's the structure. Ineffective, ethical, and persuasive. Ineffective. Everyone's doing it. This sounds inflated. It triggers skepticism. Ethical and persuasive. 5 out of 7 teams have already implemented this. Now it feels real, specific, grounded. Ineffective. You should try this. This feels like advice. And unsolicited advice creates resistance. Ethical and persuasive. 2 of our top performers have started using this system and reported saving about 3 hours a week. Now it's not pressure, it's information. Ineffective. This is the best option. That sounds subjective. Ethical and persuasive. 3 clients chose this option after comparing both alternatives. Now the decision feels validated by others. But here's where your influence deepens. It's not just what you say. It's how you respond. This is where tactical empathy, a concept popularized by Chris Voss, becomes powerful. Let's break down 4 tools you can combine with social proof. 1. Mirroring. Mirroring means repeating the last few key words someone said to encourage them to expand. If they say, "I'm not sure this will work for our team," you respond, "For your team?" It signals attention and invites elaboration. 2. Labeling. Labeling means naming the emotion or concern you hear. It sounds like you're worried about the transition period. When people feel understood, resistance drops. 3. Calibrated questions. These are how or what questions that invite collaboration. Instead of pushing, you ask, "How would you want this implemented to make it feel workable?" Now you're building buy-in. 4. The "that's right" summary. You summarize their position so accurately that they say, "That's right." So your main concern is rollout speed. But if we can ensure support during the first month, you'd be open to trying it. When they say, "That's right," alignment happens. Combine accurate social proof with tactical empathy, and you're no longer forcing agreement. You're guiding clarity. Most people try to use social proof in the moment, But the most influential professionals build it before the conversation even starts. This idea connects to the concept of persuasion, introduced by Robert Cialdini. Persuasion means shaping the psychological environment before you make your request. Instead of pushing harder during the decision, you prepare the ground in advance. Think of it like this. Influence doesn't begin when you speak. It begins when people start forming expectations. Here's how you apply that strategically. 1. Quiet coalition building. Before presenting your idea publicly, test it privately. Talk to 2 or 3 relevant people first, not to pressure them, but to refine your thinking and gauge reaction. You might say, "I'm considering proposing this in the meeting next week. I'd value your perspective. What do you think?" Now you're doing 3 things. Improving your idea, identifying objections early, potentially gaining early supporters. If even 2 people say, "That makes sense," you now have truthful social proof. When the meeting happens, you can accurately say, "I ran this by a couple of team members earlier, and they raised helpful points about implementation." Notice, you're not exaggerating. You're building momentum ethically. 2. Micro-commitments. A micro-commitment is a small, low-pressure agreement. Instead of asking, "Will you support this?" ask, "Does this direction make sense so far?" Small agreements accumulate. And when people invest even slightly, consistency psychology kicks in. They're more likely to stay aligned later. 3. Gathering early support signals. If appropriate, collect measurable data. Early testers, small results. Pilot feedback, positive comments. For example, 3 people volunteered to try this last week, and the initial feedback has been positive. That's not hype. That's reality. Here's the ethical line again. You're not faking consensus. You're creating it, honestly. You're building momentum, not manufacturing it. And when you do this consistently, something subtle changes. You stop feeling like you need validation in the moment, because you've already done the work behind the scenes. In the next section, we'll walk through exactly how this plays out in a real workplace scenario, step by step. Let's bring this together in a realistic scenario. Imagine you want to propose a workflow change, maybe a new project management system that reduces redundant emails and clarifies ownership. Step 1. Pre-meeting alignment. A week before the meeting, you speak privately with 2 team members. You say, "I'm considering suggesting we streamline our workflow using this system. I'd really value your perspective. Where do you see friction in our current setup?" They share concerns. You listen. You adjust your proposal slightly. One of them says, "Honestly, if it cuts down the email chains, I'm open to it." Now you have legitimate early support. Step 2. Present with measured social proof. In the meeting, instead of saying, "We need to change our workflow," you say, "I spoke with a couple of team members earlier this week about reducing communication bottlenecks, and they raised some helpful points about simplifying handoffs." Notice what happened. You didn't exaggerate. You didn't say everyone agrees. You accurately referenced early alignment. That lowers perceived risk immediately. Step 3. Use a calibrated question. After explaining the idea, you turn to a manager and ask, "How would this affect your team's timeline?" This is a calibrated question. It invites collaboration instead of triggering defensiveness. Now they feel involved in shaping the solution. Step 4. Label the resistance. They respond, "My concern is that implementation might slow us down." Instead of arguing, you label, "It sounds like you're concerned about implementation speed." This shows you're listening. Step 5. The "that's right" summary. After they elaborate, you summarize. So your main concern is avoiding disruption during rollout. But if we phased it gradually, you'd feel more comfortable testing it. When they respond, "That's right," alignment has begun. Now you're not pushing an idea. You're building agreement step by step. That's ethical influence in action. Specific social proof. Tactical empathy. Collaborative framing. Social proof isn't just for meetings. It's powerful in personal conversations, especially when you're setting boundaries or negotiating expectations. The key is tone. Calm, respectful, specific, never exaggerated. Let's look at a few examples. 1. Setting boundaries with friends. Imagine you have a friend who frequently cancels plans last minute. You've tried saying, "I don't like when you cancel." That's honest, but it can feel accusatory. Instead, you might say, "I've noticed that most people I make plans with confirm earlier in the day. When plans change last minute, it throws off my schedule." This uses gentle peer-based social proof. You're not attacking. You're contextualizing, or even more grounded. I try to make commitments that I can keep because that's important to me. And most of my close friends operate the same way. You're aligning your boundary with a norm, not presenting it as a personal criticism. No exaggeration. No, everyone does this. Just a steady frame of what's typical and reasonable. 2. Negotiating expectations in a relationship. Let's say you're discussing shared responsibilities at home. Instead of, "You never help enough," try, "Most couples I've spoken with divide responsibilities in a way that feels balanced to both people. I'd like us to figure out what that looks like for us." You're not comparing your partner negatively. You're referencing a broader norm of fairness. That lowers defensiveness and opens collaboration. 3. Salary discussion. This is where social proof becomes especially powerful and especially sensitive. Instead of, "I deserve more," you might say, "Others in similar roles in our industry are receiving compensation in the range of X to Y. Based on my performance and responsibilities, I'd like to discuss aligning with that range." Or, "Most people in our position typically earn within this band, and I'd appreciate exploring how we can move toward that." Notice the difference. You're not making demands. You're referencing relevant peers. You're grounding your request in data. And again, precision matters. Use real research. Use accurate comparisons. Stay calm. Social proof in personal conversations works best when it feels informative, not confrontational. You're not trying to overpower someone. You're trying to normalize fairness. And when delivered with steady confidence, that's incredibly persuasive. Social proof is powerful. But when used poorly, it can quietly destroy your credibility. Let's talk about the mistakes. 1. Overusing everyone. If you constantly say, "Everyone's doing it," most people agree. This is standard everywhere. People stop believing you. The more absolute your language, the more your listener's brain looks for exceptions. And the moment they find one, trust drops. Remember, influence increases with precision. Replace absolutes with specifics. 2. Vague proof creates skepticism. A lot of companies are doing this. That sounds like marketing. Your listener may not challenge you out loud, but internally, they're questioning it. Vagueness feels like inflation. Specificity feels like honesty. Even saying, "3 companies in our sector adopted this last quarter," is dramatically stronger than "everyone's switching." 3. Misaligned reference groups. This one is subtle but critical. Social proof only works if the reference group feels relevant. Telling a conservative finance team, "Tech startups are all doing this," may actually reduce buy-in. Why? Because they don't identify with that group. Effective social proof answers the question, "People like me are doing this." Wrong reference group, lost influence. 4. Psychological reactance. There's another risk. Pressure. When people feel pushed, even subtly, they experience something called psychological reactance. That's the instinct to resist when freedom feels threatened. If your tone implies, "Everyone agrees, so you should too," you may trigger quiet rebellion. So what's the solution? Use soft framing. Instead of presenting social proof as a verdict, present it as context. Several teams have started testing this, and early results look promising. That invites curiosity, not compliance. Invite collaboration. Follow social proof with a calibrated question. How does this land with you? What concerns would you want addressed before trying this? Now they're part of the process. Ask before you assert. If resistance appears, label it. It sounds like you're not fully convinced yet. Then pause. When people feel heard, they soften. Social proof works best when it reduces uncertainty, not when it eliminates autonomy. Let's bring this together. Social proof works because it reduces uncertainty. When people aren't sure what to do, they look to others for cues. That's not weakness. It's human psychology. But here's the blueprint. Specific beats vague. 7 out of 10 is stronger than a lot. 3 teammates is stronger than everyone. Truth builds long-term authority. You can win short-term compliance with exaggeration. But you build real influence with accuracy. Build proof before you need it. Have quiet conversations. Test ideas early. Create small pockets of alignment. And when the moment comes, you're not scrambling for validation. You already have it. Use empathy and calibrated questions. Social proof lowers risk. Empathy lowers resistance. Questions invite ownership. That combination is powerful. Now here's your mini influence challenge for the next 7 days. Identify one real conversation where you want more buy-in. It could be a meeting, a boundary, a negotiation, or a proposal. Gather one truthful supporting example. A peer comparison. A small data point. An early supporter. Upgrade one phrase. Replace everyone with a specific number. Replace you should with contextual proof. After the conversation, reflect. Did resistance drop? Did the tone shift? Did the discussion feel more collaborative? Influence is not about being louder. It's about being clearer. It's about understanding how decisions actually happen and guiding them ethically. And the fact that you're studying this? That already puts you ahead. You don't need a dominant personality. You need structured psychology and steady delivery. And now you have both. Like the video, if you learned at least one technique you're going to try this week. Comment your next real situation where you want more influence. And include the keyword social proof in all caps. And subscribe to the Influence Blueprint and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next set of ethical persuasion tools and practical phrases.